how are you getting along with that new format for the last part? Have you guys been able to look into the test review yet or no?
I actually just did this morning.
Okay. Was that? Let me just maybe start with that. Was it easy to find for you?
You're talking about test 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it was easy to find. I scrolled all the way down the modules and found it at the bottom.
Good. Yeah. So if you can see my screen in the back, I'm actually in that module in the week 10 now. And I'm not in student view. Now I'm going to be in student view. There you go. And then if you go, it's going to be a little slow here, I think. Hopefully not too bad. Test 2, bye-bye. I'm still grading some of you guys, but a lot of you guys did real well. So I'm really happy with the results. This is today we're going to do week 10. And then look, we get into so today we're going to do blood and immune system. Then we get into the endocrine, to the skin. Then we'll do a little bit on the brain and the related organs, 2 weeks on it. That's usually quite exciting. I like the brain a lot. We go in lab and dissect the brain and the eyeball if you're part of that group. And then we go into respiratory, the lungs and the digestions, and we have a little nutrition, finish up with urinary and reproduction, actually finish up with embryology. And then at the bottom here, you see test 3. So we only have a test at the very end in terms of a test. That test is kind of like the second and the first combined. So if you go into the review, you're going to get tabs. You're going to get one tab. That's the test review other than the anatomy terms. The anatomy terms are the things you started doing where you label the heart. And now you do some labeling of the blood. And then we get into the brain. We don't really label anything in the immune system, not really too much in the blood. But those are the testable anatomy terms that's going to be on a list like you already had in number 2. And then this one, hopefully will come up, is, yeah, look at that. This one is a fairly detailed review of all the major points I want you to know for the test. So if you print this out nowish and you make sure you understand all of this stuff that we're talking about here, then you're good for that part of the test. And then the other thing is the anatomy terms. And it's an open book test. So this should be sort of, or for many people, this is sort of a central place of organization, or make sure you have, flashcards for all these points that you have a little harder time getting into your brain or something like that. But this is really all that it is for the written part, which makes up half of that third test. It's about 65 questions altogether. And it's mostly multiple choice, true, false, that kind of stuff. Especially this stuff is not fill in the blanks at all. So that's up front to, as we go now through these next weeks, with having such a detailed test review. And if you print that out up front or have it on your whatever mobile device or so, although this stuff, if you can, is kind of good to print, because then you can take notes and it's easier for most of us, at least. Actually, I shouldn't say that anymore, because the iPads are really getting good. If you have the pencil, you can zoom in and then you can have it be smaller and smaller and have more detail on it. So I've really enjoyed that too, if you do that feature. But we go through all these weeks here before we then do the test. So you should be hopefully able to just sort of kick back. Well, not kick back. It's still a lot of work, of course, but somewhat go through these chapters and do them in a way that you don't always are in anxiety. Oh my God, I remember everything. Do it more from a perspective like, let me try to understand what he's talking about. Well, and of course, my explanations sometimes are not the best, but I'm trying my best. At least you can know that. So does that make sense in terms of how the next section or this section works? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good. Because then what we're doing today is we're looking at the blood, although I shouldn't open it here. This is way too much. So let me go back to modules. Hold on, let me go to this part. minimize this puppy. And go into the blood real quick here. There you go. Uh-oh, where am I? I'm getting used to all these programs. It's kind of interesting. So you're gonna have a couple of chapters. You're gonna have the blood, and then you're gonna have the immune system on top of that. So most of that, I'll have you watch videos, and then we mold the material through the questions, and then the blood has a little bit of labeling, just five terms, really, or six, no, 7 terms, something like that. Not many. When we look at the blood, it's a connective tissue. So we have multiple components like we had in bone, for example, where we have blood cells and we have a extracellular matrix, and that's made up of fiber and of ground substance. And in blood, the ground substance is liquid. It's mostly water. In bone, that was solid. That was calcium more. And so we briefly talk about that. We go through the functions of delivering nutrients, et cetera, and then we go and talk about the red blood cells, and then go through the white blood cells, and then as we get into the plate, so the red blood cells are the ones, they carry the oxygen around. The white blood cells are the
if I
ones.
had to use a sentence to describe what is walking meditation.
Wait, wait, what? Sorry, go ahead. Hello. Oh, I guess that wasn't for us. Sorry about that. Where was I? Oh, the red blood cells is the stuff that carries the oxygen around, and as a general understanding. And the white blood cells is part of the immune system. So those are the immune cells that help defend us against foreign substances that come in. And then the platelets are cool because the blood vessels can break, and the liquid just squirts out, and platelets are here to, they're little fragments of cells. They're not real cells themselves, and they're here to plug those holes up. And that's also where we get into the clotting, because if you look at the fiber, a fiber is something that binds things together. And in a blood, you want that liquid to flow freely. You don't want these fibers to clog things together. But if you have to patch a vessel wall break or something, then you do want that. And so there's a fine dance between making these fibers in the blood soluble, so they precipitate out and they patch a hole, and insoluble, so they don't clump up and do that when we don't want that. And so that's the blood clotting. Is a very elaborate process. We just briefly talk about it, as we make that final step from an insoluble fiber to a soluble fiber to then help the platelets patch a hole. So that's why that takes up a whole bullet point here. And then as we get into plasma, that's then the liquid stuff. We talked briefly about, proteins in there and watery and all the, how much water and so forth. And then we talk about the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen brings, it gives the cell the ability to make ATP. And then carbon dioxide is the byproduct, the waste product that we got to kick out and breathe out through the lungs. And so the blood goes by the lungs to pick up oxygen, delivers it to the cells to make energy, and the byproduct is carbon dioxide, the waste product of making that energy, and then that gets breathed out again through the lungs. When we need to get rid of something that's gases, we can use the lungs for that. So that's very helpful. And we briefly talk about how those elements get transported, or those molecules get transported through the blood system. The oxygen is attached to the blood cell, but the carbon dioxide has to travel bound to other molecules through the blood liquid. And so that's sort of the big difference there. That's kind of interesting. I always thought both go through the red blood cells, but they actually don't. And then we have a little discussion about blood groups in there at the end to finish up. So that's also kind of interesting. A little mind thing that I want you guys to go to. And then if you want to next week, we can talk about that. But I want to make sure you guys, do the videos and the questions. And then if there's questions after that, bring them to my attention. Or, of course, you can always text me and although I have to go to Europe midweek for a couple of weeks. Uh, but I'm textable and I'm emailable and I'm Zoomable, which we do regularly. It's just sometimes if I don't get a text, potentially if it's maybe an Android versus an iPhone thing, then just shoot me also an email and I'll make sure I'll text the emails real well during this period for sure. But anyway, it shouldn't be any concern to you because we don't have an in-person lab during this period anyway. By the way, tonight there is no in-person lab because it actually is a holiday for the school, which I kind of failed to understand. I'm sorry about that. But we will catch up that lab. It's a small lab anyway where we dissect the heart. And so we're going to dissect the heart in a later time in another lab. So that pretty much covers the blood. And then after the blood, in terms of a quick overview, after the blood, we go to the immune system. And then that's where we want to, be defending against foreign substances coming into the body. So we talk about that. Although when we talk about the immune system, let me make sure I go on here in the right way. When we talk about the immune system, the main initial thing that happens is really a not letting the stuff get into the body. So the skin and in the mouth, the mucous membrane and all that, that's really the immune system components that really help us. Actually, in many ways, you could consider almost the most because they don't let anything come in. But then once anything foreign is crossing that boundary, remember we talked about boundaries in chapter 1 way long ago for some, the necessary things that we need to be able to survive, and boundaries are really important. But once a foreign pathogen or some substance we don't want in the body crosses that boundary, we first have this non-specific immune response where we start with an inflammatory response, and then we're gonna get. Let me show you down here real quick. The skin, see mucous membrane, and we have an inflammatory response. So that's a non-selective response where the immune system just kind of tries to not have this pathogen come into the system too much and too far. And so it just attacks everything that comes in. So it makes kind of sense. If you think about some intruder coming, you just kind of want to push the thing out. But then as a secondary response, we're going to have what we can know as a specific immune response. And that's when the immune system recognizes very specifically what to attack and what to kill, so to speak. And that's called learned immunity. And that's where we get into the vaccines discussion, because what the body does, it learns about, and once it's exposed to a pathogen, it learns about that pathogen and understands its DNA components or its markers. It's really about markers. Everything, not everything, but a lot of things in the body are about markers and recognition of shapes and things like that. And it's actually really interesting that it is that physical. But once the body learns that, the immune cell learn that, then in a secondary response, once you get the chickenpox vaccine, or in my day, you get exposed to the neighbor kids are taking chickenpox, go over there and go play. So you get sick because you want to be sick early so you don't get a bad disease when you're older. And because when you're older and you get exposed, then the immune system knows how to respond and has already all these weapons created against it. All these, we call them antibodies, and also cellular as well. Attackers that know what to look for and what to sort of really shoot down. And so then that's the specific immune, specific meaning the specific pathogen gets attacked. And so when you start with the non-specific, you start with the inflammatory response. So when you do that, you think about, you just don't think about that. But, your nail penetrates the skin or something. You get a whole bunch of weird, bad stuff coming in that's not happy making. And you got a whole bunch of responses that we all know about because they happen to us. And here we just list them that are part of the inflammatory reaction. And that means we get fluids going to the area to flush everything out and make sure that the bad stuff doesn't come in. And then we get a lot of white blood cells going into the area to eat up as much of the bad stuff as possible. And and render the pathogen neutral as much as possible. And this here sort of describes the process of doing that. So this is kind of cool stuff. And you kind of want to visualize these pictures of what's really going on, because literally these chemicals, these cells, these neutrophil cells, these ones, they are in the bloodstream. They smell, so to speak. They chemically get attracted. Look at that. Chemotaxis is a word. It's really a cool word. They get attracted to those chemicals that come in from the outside, and then they neutralize these chemicals. They eat them up. They destroy them, and sometimes they even get killed themselves. And that's when you have pus. And so if you next time you have pus, it goes like, ew, it's like, thank you for protecting me. Maybe, something like that. But that's that process. It's a very physical process in reality. This part is really kind of cool. And then from there, when the pathogen, let's say it's a chickenpox or so, it's not just something, it's more specific. Then the immune system has these cells that macrophages, these are big eaters, which is a cell type that you learn in the blood cell chapter. And they learn what that pathogen looks like and project it up to the surface of their themselves, their surface, and then other cells that are part of the immune system, the B and T cells, though, they can then start recognizing it and become more and more specific in saying like, hey, we need to recognize this shape of these pathogens to specifically attack it, because it might come back. And then that's where we go into the specific immunity, and the body learns that part. So let's go back all the way to the top here, because we don't need to go through everything. So that's when we talk about all of that sort of stuff, including the immunization. Look at this, cool words, histocompatibility complex. That's every cell needs to understand how does the own cell looks. And so we need to talk about that too. How does this an immune cell recognize something is foreign or not foreign? So that's what we talk about in here. So that's part of that discussion. So it's a deep chapter. It's an intellectual chapter somewhat, but it's interesting, and you just keep it as visual as possible with all these pictures that are in the videos. Hopefully that'll help. And again, if questions arise on it, then just shoot me a text and we'll have a session or something if you want. And we'll finish up the chapter with lymphoid organs, and those are like your tonsils, your lymph nodes, and things like that. That help the immune system. The spleen's also one of those that help the immune system stay on top of it. And these are also filters, like the lymph nodes are filtered that filter the lymph, which is what squeezes out from the blood system, and then it is brought back to the venous system together, and the lymph system bring back all the fluids into the heart, and the lymph gets filtered in that process, and we can pick up the problems and eliminate them. And of course, negatively speaking, we can also spread cancer in that process. That's lymph nodes. The spleen does the same process and filters the blood. It's just not the lymph, but the blood itself. And so these organs, you will discuss a few of them, and that will finish up this chapter. All right, good. How is that? Are we doing all right, you guys? Everybody? Yeah. Good. All right, so let's see where we are here. I think this is, let me make sure, what's this one? Oh, this is the Zoom later. Okay. So let's go to this week, because that's the chapter. And this week is actually, we're starting a new thing. We're starting the pathology project a little bit more seriously, huh? How are you guys up feeling about that? Any questions? Any thoughts so far? Any confusions? Good. You good?
Where do you find it, modules?
Yes, I just put it up now because I had to rewrite it. Because that was such a brilliant idea a few weeks ago of one of you guys about you guys choosing the pathology versus choosing the group. So that's worked so much better, because then I have more of a, it's more interesting if you can choose what you want to do versus one person sort of, Anyway, but that went up now. So let's go right to it. So week 10 is right here. There it is. And so now that you've chosen the pathology, I texted out in terms of these questions that I want you guys to focus on, these areas, like what is the thing, what is a diabetes, what is heart disease, what is, and you research that as one part, and then the other part another person does, one of you guys, what does conventional, what do I get when I go to the doctor? Because medicine, is very complex, and a lot of what we're getting is good, but it's not. It's also the compromise is they have to act really fast, so they don't have time to often talk more detailed about what else could we do, and that's where the third question comes in, as a lifestyle sort of type intervention and slash alternative, because we often do have that thing that we can also do to help, and we think medicine covers everything, but medicine can't cover those kind of things.
We need at the grocery store on the way back.
Watch out! Hold on. Go to me.
The groceries that we need.
There we go. I think we got it, huh? Sorry about that. Boom. Oops, where am I? Here. So after you do that, then you go and immerse yourself in studying some of that, study the pathology and that area, and gather information together. I want you guys to have about five references, all minimum each of you. That websites, and you just copy paste the website. Make sure you don't lose sight of that, where you gather your stuff from, and then you summarize the key points. You create a presentation, and then make a 2 to 3 minute video, voiceover video, at a second later stage. We make that all together as a group, and the group video will be then about 10 minutes altogether. We do that in week 13, so I'll guide you through that process. And then to finish up, we can watch each other's presentation, learn pathologies, different diseases, and engage in a little feedback discussion about, well, not little, because we give each other feedback. We learn and we feedback and make a better thing. So improve on the next project that we're going to get as we go through college. And so my goal with this is to give us a lot of information in a fairly easy, short format. We all gather and then share with each other. And also in the process, so, most of you probably know how to do all of that, but some of us don't, and we get to make a presentation, learn how to do a PowerPoint or a Google Slides, or these days an infographic. I'm starting to be into infographics, because I can share that as one document with somebody, and it's not like putting a page over. It's just like zooming in and viewing things that way. So that's kind of an interesting newer format as well. And then later I can also show you, at least we go through making a video. Most likely these days, well, not most likely, I think the Zoom has really provided us a format that makes it easy to do that with. But first, what you do is we give you 2 weeks to do a research and do the draft presentation. And then once you have something, I want you to upload that. And then I go through it and I give you feedback. And then, we have a week to kind of fine tune that thing. And then we do 2 weeks of making a voiceover video and have another week of refining. And then last week of the semester, we'll discuss the thing together. So that is a fairly long process. It's a fairly decent project size-wise. But making it step by step makes it not too much, and hopefully fun for most students. Really actually like doing this project, even though at first it's a little like like everything is, a little bit. So anyway, when you research, go and do the Google search first. Go to things that are more like .orgs or .govs or .eus, not necessarily just .coms. Or the ones that say ad in the front, so you just end up having somebody sell you some snake oil thing, and you think it's the real deal. So that's a little bit of filtering, and then other sites like WebMD or Mayo Clinic, those are reputable sites, even though they are .coms. And I do like Wikipedia as a starting point to start researching and going into things. And so read through some sites, extract the info, and make bullet points with it, or extract the most important words, and then in a second part put that together in a presentation format, which essentially what you want to do is you want to, use a little bit of text and a lot of visuals to explain. And then when you make the video, it's easy to basically talk about the pictures with a few key points, keywords that keep you guided in how to talk through it. And so that's what we have in these first 2 weeks. Down here, I've got a few tips of how, that help me. Again, most of it is use a lot of pictures. Then also, think of how can I grasp the students' attention, the other people's, maybe a personal story, or why did I get interested in it? How can I make my topic relevant to others? How can I make it so they want to listen to me when I talk about? Often I speak things out loud, even though it sounds weird, but it's different how things sound when I actually even hear it versus it's just in my head or written on a piece of paper. So there's a few things too, that you can practice going through that process of doing a presentation. I want you to do this thing as a group, but also as individuals. So I want you to make sure you help each other with technical things, with research questions, with language questions. A lot of us are ESL students, so we want to be supportive of each other as much as we can, but also, of course, hold each other accountable. Once in a while, I got a stray who is just not behaving right. Make sure if that's the case, I'm aware of it, so I can hopefully catch it early and make sure everybody's doing the right work and doing their job. So don't make sure in a group project always that we keep that in mind. Everybody's here to be supportive, but everybody has to step up and do work. What is it? Everything is radical acceptance these days or so. So I'm going with radical responsibility. No matter if we have excuses, we still need to do the work. But if something gets hard or difficult, or you don't know what to do, reach out to me. I'm here to support you all through this process. That's actually why I'm doing this undertaking too, because I feel if I can teach some of you guys a few tricks I learned along the way early in your college career, or any professional career, that's probably good stuff to know. Even though, presenting, making a video for some people is a little difficult, but again, we can do it together. All right, so I'm here to hold your hands through it. Look at that, my phone number is right here. If you have any questions, you just check with me. So that is the next 2 weeks of this pathology project. And so then after we're doing the research, which you're starting to do now, then in week 13 we're going to do the video presentation. And the video presentation, we're going to have the directions here of how to present, kind of. You can read through that, but then how to do the Zoom, we're gonna go on to Zoom itself together. You can use the ID that I have at the home. You should be able to do everything there, including record and share screen. If I approved everything, if not, then we will fix that. That's one thing I couldn't check from my own computer because I'm the one doing it. But then you make a presentation where everybody individually shares their screen what they're presenting, even if it's a group presentation. That way they can move the cursor around and do this, flip the slides and so forth. Or you can also do one person presents and then they just need to be knowing what they're doing. Whatever works easier. And you record the session. One person needs to record it only because it's a group presentation. Although I would have a extra person recorded just in case something goes awry, so we have a backup. And then I just talk briefly about how to do it in terms of I will practice a little bit and then how to record it. And then after that, we take the video that comes to your computer. You choose that you have it on your local device where it gets recorded to. And from there, then what you can do, that one person that you guys decide who's doing it goes to over here to Studio. And in Studio there, when you click on that, you get a new thing. And look, I posted something already, but you can then either if you have not anything, it clicks in here, says add a video or start, or you click up here where it says add a video, and then you can browse your computer and you can click something that you click where it came down to. Make sure you, when you download the video from Zoom, that you write down where it's actually saved, so you know what to look for when you upload it here. And then when you finish uploading it in here, then you go, and then one person in the week 13 at the assignment itself, back in here, if you start then the assignment, you can go see Studio, and in Studio then you can upload and select whichever one you want to. Most likely you just have one up there, and then you embed that, and then it's embedded in here right there, and then you submit that assignment, and then that's it. And one person per group does that, because then I see that in the background. I see that in the background who is doing it, or you also help me. No, I have that in the background. Then I can give everybody the credits. In terms of the presentation, I want you to do a group presentation, but that's one reason why I have the question, so I know who's doing what. But Jessica, if you have a different format, you just tell me the format, and then I can follow that thing, where I can just sort of get an understanding what's group and what's individual work. And that's sort of it. And then at the end, week 16, I believe, last week, we're going to have us a discussion on that to finish up. We post up the video and make sure, we can view each other's presentation and then talk about it and give each other a little feedback on how, I'm teaching you the sandwich method, which we use in course reviews for other professors, where, you're really analyzing it and say, like, look at what really nice, and then give one piece of feedback on the product and help the person, give them an idea of how to make it better and how to do that. Anywho, that's about it for that part of what I wanted to talk about today. Is that fairly clear to you guys? No? Okay. Well, the other thing we're going to do this week is the blood pressure health kit assignment. So I want you to read through this assignment. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have us do something on understanding blood pressure more, because high blood pressure is a problem in our country and society and modern world and all of that stuff. And has a lot of implications of what it does, but it also has a lot of causations, and it has a lot of things we can do to reduce the problem of a high blood pressure, generally speaking. And I list them here, kind of thing. I did some research and went through some stuff, and so you can read up on that, get a little insight. And then as a I know it's a topic, we like salt, we like our coffee and all that, but we can still talk about it and learn from it. And then as an exercise, I'm going to have you guys monitor your salt intake for 1 week. And the reason why I want to do that is because, where do I say it? Part 1, yeah, I see salt intake for 5 days. Just make a little table, look up on the label. You know how to read labels now. Look up what the sodium is. If it's home cooked, just estimate it. Look up some online if you have to. Do the best you can. Don't be too obsessive over it, but monitor it more or less so you get an idea of what you're actually taking into the body in that salt department. And the reason why I want to do salt is because it's heavily influencing the blood pressure, and it's heavily adaptive, meaning we're getting used to it. But that also means we're getting used to not having it or having less. And so often combining something like that with consciousness will help us make a difference, potentially. So as a group, we're just going to do that for 5 days. And then, that means I have to do it too. That's why I do this. So I do it every half year, do it once. And then we're going to have us a little discussion at the end over it. But that way we can sort of get something, I don't know, realistic, real life, useful, so to speak, out of what are we learning with when we talk about the heart and cardiovascular system. Is that okay, guys? Or easy, sensible?
Yes.
Good. All right. Well, with that, I am pretty good for this week.